characters in their story, in their play, and that's not who we are, and we never audition for that part, and the play is not one that ends up good for us. If you listen to the drama they're describing, essentially it's a 5-act play in which the Jews disappear in the 4th act. So here we can see how end times beliefs can become dangerous when they cross over from being a private fantasy to influencing politics and relations between people. The more seriously and literally someone takes end times prophecies, the more likely they are to alter their lifestyle accordingly. If you believe that the tribulation is imminent, and especially if you believe that you won't be able to escape it by being raptured at the beginning, then you're going to want to make preparations. For some people, this has meant living in isolated seclusion, perhaps with a stockpile of weapons and tinned food. Others have joined small groups living communally. Possibly the most well-known of these has been the Branch Davidians, who lived at a ranch outside Waco in Texas. They hit the headlines in 1993, following the siege and battle with the FBI and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco and Firearms. This began when the authorities arrived with a search warrant for illegal weapons. As the ranch was stormed, the Branch Davidians returned fire, and in the ensuing battle, 5 Branch Davidians and 4 BATF agents were killed. The next day, the FBI took over and a siege began which lasted 51 days. Tear gas rounds were fired into the ranch and those inside were blasted with the sounds of animals being slaughtered. If you were trapped inside the building, covering your ears and trying to hide from gunfire and CS gas, then you could be forgiven for thinking that the apocalypse had begun. When the building caught fire, 74 Branch Davidians died, including their leader David Koresh and 23 children. The Branch Davidians not only believed that the end times were already here, but that they were central to the events unfolding. David Koresh believed that he was the Lamb, the only person worthy of breaking the 7 seals and revealing the true contents of the book mentioned in Revelation. Indeed, a lot of Koresh's time during the siege was spent hurriedly trying to complete his written explanation of the 7 seals. This preoccupied him to the extent that any negotiations with the FBI were hampered, partly because they were baffled at the obscure biblical quotations he was coming out with. Indeed, the main reason why the siege couldn't be ended by negotiation is that each side couldn't understand the other's viewpoint. The Branch Davidians can be traced back to the Millerites, who were the followers of William Miller in mid-19th century America. Miller was a prosperous farmer living just outside New York. His interpretations of biblical passages were published in several journals and grew in popularity until he became the centre of a national movement. His readings of the Bible led him to believe that Jesus would return to cleanse, purify and take possession of earth between 21st of March 1843 and the 21st of March 1844. However, of course, if Jesus really did return between those dates, he kept very quiet about it, and there were certainly no giant locusts or anything. A few days afterwards, after the 21st of March 1844, when the time had passed, Miller wrote, "I'm still looking for the one dear Saviour, and I expect every moment to see the Saviour descend from heaven. I now have nothing to look for but this glorious hope." So another date was set for Christ's return, 18th of April 1844. Miller's followers were still faithful when this date passed without incident. So another date was calculated, 22nd of October 1844. The popular press described the Millerites behaving like fanatics, abandoning homes and possessions in readiness. But when this date passed, most Millerites had run out of patience or faith. The day was named the Great Disappointment. Most of his followers abandoned their beliefs. Some ended up in lunatic asylums, while others formed new groups, including the Seventh-day Adventists. And it was an offshoot of this group who became the Branch Davidians at Waco. The Millerites highlight the problem of giving definite dates for a prophecy. Without a precise date, a prophecy can seem vague. However, setting a date is a risky gamble, as a whole movement can be at stake if and when it isn't fulfilled. Incidentally, put this in your diaries, the next date to watch out for is 2012, which some New Agers believe is when the Mayan prophecies of a major cataclysm will come true. But if you accept the end time scenario presented in the Bible, you're bound to ask, when is it going to happen? or even has it already started? Events in the news may be interpreted as signs that the end times are here. For example, rising in crime, climate change, things like that. And if you've got that mindset, this is likely to galvanise your belief and strengthen the bonds within groups. And when you believe that only a limited number of people will be raptured and escape the tribulation, then you're going to want to be one of them. This has given some fringe groups a sense of urgency, which has led to what researcher David Bromley has called a dramatic denouement. This is a situation where a group's beliefs are so extreme that they can only lead to a tragedy unless they allow the sort of disappointment experienced by the Millerites. So, as we've seen, the Branch Davidians' dramatic denouement was kick-started by the FBI siege. The catalyst for what happened to the Heaven's Gate group was more innocuous and even irrelevant. Heaven's Gate operated across Northern America in the early 1970s. Sorry, from the early 1970s. The two leaders of the group, Bonnie Nettles and Marshall Applewhite, came to believe that they were the two witnesses mentioned in the book of Revelation. According to the Bible, in the last days, God will appoint two witnesses and give them the power to prophesy. However, this power will only last until they are killed by the beast that ascendeth out of the bottomless pit. Their bodies will lie untouched in the street for 3 days until God resurrects them and they are ascended up to heaven in a cloud. Nettles and Applewhite later believed that this cloud would be a spaceship that would take them up to the physical kingdom of heaven. So, they worked to spread their interpretation of these prophecies and prepare their followers to make the so-called transition from the human level to the next level. To prepare for this journey, followers were taught to reject material possessions and sexual relationships, and some people even agreed to castration. By the late 1980s, followers had given up their nomadic lifestyles to live in shared houses. Members wore uniforms and were explicitly forbidden to question directives. Like the Branch Davidians, the Heaven's Gate group believed that they were living through the end times. However, for Heaven's Gate, the catalyst for the end times would be the Hale-Bopp comet. They believed that flying alongside the comet was the spaceship that they were waiting for. So, when the comet reached its closest point to Earth in March 1997, the group believed that this would be the optimum time for them to be transported up to the spaceship. In the words of one of the Heaven's Gate group, consider a scenario where Hale-Bopp comes close enough to devastate the planet. Let's say this companion to Hale-Bopp did indeed turn out to be a spaceship of the next level. The advanced occupants of this spaceship know the purpose of Hale-Bopp is to recycle the planet. They've sent it here to give the planet a rest from the corrupt humans infesting it. Suppose they send shuttles ahead to rescue any soul worth saving. As they neared the appointed time, members recorded video messages to loved ones to say that they were happy to leave and that they were doing so of their own free will. Over the course of 3 days, the away team organised themselves to depart in staggered batches. In turn, they ate desserts laced with phenobarbital. The bodies were tidily arranged by the next group, who then poisoned themselves. Police were alerted by an ex-member, and 39 corpses were discovered in the group's mansion. Needless to say, the comet didn't devastate our planet, and there was no sign of a spaceship. The actions of the Heaven's Gate group show it to be on the extremes of belief. However, there have been other cults with similarly sad stories, and although the Heaven's Gate version of the Christian end time scenario is bizarre, it still follows the pattern of a rapture before a purifying tribulation caused by humanity's moral collapse, as they see it. But Christianity and its offshoots isn't the only religion to include end times beliefs. In fact, most of the major faiths have a scenario which follows a pattern similar to that of Christianity. Catholicism, however, mostly ignores this part of the Bible. The Jewish end times scenario is less far-fetched than the Christian one. It's predicted that Jewish exiles will return to Israel, which will then grow in strength. During a great battle between Israel and its enemies, God will